Okay, I'm just gonna say this right off the bat. I do not like multi-POV books. Books with multiple point of view characters? I almost never like them. So why are you making this video, you may ask? Well, just hang in there for like a few seconds. Alright, here's the problem. There is always at least one point of view that I just don't care about. And every time their chapters come around, I'm just like, ugh, we're back with these people again. It drags down the whole book. Don't lie to me, I know you think so too. So I have put together a list of 7 tips on how to write an actually good multi-POV story. Multiple points of view. Point of views. From the point of view of someone who does not like them. Typically, there are some exceptions, and I will tell you that. Number 7 on this list is really the most important tip, but here we go. Here's what you gotta do to make me like your book. Because I am the most important reader, obviously. Okay, tip number 1. This is a little trick to get me to read your multi-POV book. It's risky, but I tend to feel better about a book when there is a wild number of point of view characters, as opposed to just like 1 or 2. I mean like 2 or 3, there has to be at least 1. You know, like if there's 5 narrators, or 7, or 13. No, 13 is too many. This is a risky move for pretty much every reason, but the main one will be that people might not be able to remember or differentiate your different point of view characters. You know, your readers might be overwhelmed with how many points of view they have to handle. Point of views, I don't know. And for you, as the writer, it will also be insanely difficult to create that many distinct voices and give each character a strong enough reason to be a point of view character. It can be done, but it's hard, I'm just warning you. Okay, that's the main reason why it's risky. But even for me, as someone who does not tend to enjoy multi-POV books, this tip is still risky because the reason it works for me is that when I'm reading a book that has just an inordinate number of point of view characters, I kind of settle into the idea that I shouldn't get too attached to any one point of view. Okay, that sounds bad. I mean, like, my brain just kind of recognized that having so many POVs is like part of the novel's structure or something. It's pacing, some ingrained element, so it doesn't settle in for the long haul every time we get a new point of view, which I like. Because then I'm not getting just constantly bumped out of the story, which is what happens to me when we switch point of views on the regular. I mean, you know, if there's like 2 point of views or 3 point of views, every time a point of view switched, I get bumped from the story. Why does everybody else like so many point of views? I don't know. But I do. So if you have a large number of point of view characters, my brain just kind of knows that we won't get stuck with one for too long. Makes it sound like I'm like sitting for a root canal. You know, it just appreciates each chapter and then knowing it will be over soon. I mean, you know, if there's a bunch of characters and my brain knows that, then it knows that when the boring point of view comes around, we won't be stuck in it for too long, so I can push through. Because you know there is a boring point of view. You know it, I know it. But if there's 6 points of view, then the boring one will only be 16% of the book rather than 33% of the book if there were 3 point of views. Just something to think about. As an example, Lucy Foley does this quite well in her novels. She tends to have like 5 or 6 narrators, sometimes more. And I like her novels, I do. I enjoy them. Tip number 2. Another risky one. Are all these going to be risky tips? I do not know. Maybe, you know, who knows? We're talking about writing a type of book that I don't tend to enjoy. So yeah, there's going to be some risks that you're going to have to take in order to make me like your book. But this one is similar to the previous tip, and that is to make sure that your chapters are short. Have rapid fire switching between points of view. A lot of people won't recommend this because it is risky. High risk, high reward. I mean, maybe don't switch like every paragraph, but every 4 or 5 pages. That could keep my goldfish brain hooked. Tip number 3. In order to make me not hate your multi-POV book, do not show us the same scene from different viewpoints. Like, don't even have the scenes overlap. If you have one character slam a bowl to the counter and then storm out of the room, don't start the next POV by that character watching the other one slam the bowl on the counter and then storm out of the room. We already know what happened. I mean, we were there. We literally just saw it. We don't need to see it again. I know there's this recent trend of like rewriting entire books from one other character's point of view, but I do not get that trend. I don't like it. I've never read one of those books. Because, you know, if we've already seen a scene happen, seeing it happen again just kills all the tension. There's literally no way for the scene to hold any tension the second time around because we already know what happens. I mean, unless you're writing a time travel story where things change the second time around. Otherwise, we're just pressing rewind and watching the same scene again, but just like a little to the left. And that is not interesting. That is repetitive. It makes your novel go by at a snail's pace, and it makes me mad. Tip number 4. Now this one is tricky. Not risky, but tricky. Because it's easy to do wrong. And that is to make sure that you don't overemphasize the differences in voice between all of the point of view characters. I'm sure you know that all the different points of view need to have unique voices and be strong enough voices to carry their own story, but there is a right way and a wrong way to do that. Alright, here's an example. It's a controversial one. I might be the only person who thinks this, but here we go. There is an extremely popular book called The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. It's a dual POV book, a runaway bestseller. I am the only person who thinks this way, so, take that as it may be. But the way O'Leary differentiates between the two POVs in her book is by writing one of them in standard prose and the other one in like a post-it note style prose. I mean, like, you don't see post-it notes, but there's not a single complete sentence to be found. Not even verbs. The subjects of sentences are missing. It's very confusing to read, and it is shocking to jump to after reading standard prose. I don't know what the purpose is besides just a shocking difference between the two point of view characters. Is it supposed to show like an analytical mind or a studiousness of that character? I do not know. But it does not work for me. What ends up happening is every time I get to one of those chapters, which is like every other chapter in the book, I'm just immediately bumped from the reading experience because my brain has to readjust from reading regular prose to reading this like avant-garde prose. And I'm not saying unconventional writing styles can't work. They absolutely can, and I can enjoy them. But I think either the entire book has to be in an unconventional writing style, or it needs to switch between multiple unconventional writing styles. Because switching between standard prose and an unconventional prose solely to differentiate the voices of two point of view characters is just too jarring to follow. I can never get immersed in the story because my brain is constantly having to readjust to the prose. And that's just work. Again, obviously other people feel differently, so take this with a grain of salt. I might be the only one who thinks this. But there you go. This is my list, so I'm putting that on there. Tip number 5. This is an interesting one, potentially like a cheat. And that is to have one main point of view and then like small snippets of some other point of view. Probably an antagonist or a character in a different timeline. But we only get their point of view maybe 4 or 5 times throughout the novel. Not every other chapter. And the scenes from their point of view are also significantly shorter than the scenes from the main point of view. Like just a few pages. To let us know what they're thinking or to contrast their actions with what the main character is doing. I don't want to say that you're essentially writing a single POV book and then just sprinkling in these random other POVs, because if you write that way, the smaller POV will always feel extraneous. So you don't want to do that. You want the chapters from the smaller POV to be intentionally part of the story. Like they must be there. They need to be integral to the story, so that you couldn't just pull them out and have the story still make sense. That's how you need to plan when you're writing. You must include the small sections in your plan and not just sprinkle them in afterwards. That's what makes it hard. But, a good example of this is the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. It's split like 70-30, maybe, with the majority of the book being from the main point of view, Robert Langdon's point of view and what he's doing, and then like 30% of the book from just like everyone else that needs a little point of view. Like antagonists or allies or just anyone who needs a little sprinkling of their own point of view. They get to make up that 30%. So even if you hate those chapters, they are few and far between. And even when you switch out of Robert Langdon's point of view, you're not automatically switching into somebody else's point of view, because there's multiple people there that could be taking up those 30%. And that keeps your brain involved. It works for me. Tip number 6. This one might seem more like a pet peeve, but I don't think it is. And that is ending a chapter on a cliffhanger and then switching point of views to a character who is not doing anything nearly as exciting. It feels like a cheat that you've just done to make me keep reading your book. And then I get angry, and then I want to skip ahead to the chapter where the person who had the cliffhanger's story will pick back up again. I don't care about this stuff in the middle, I was all on the edge of my seat, and now, where am I? Bored. I'm like, why are you making me read this boring backstory chapter when I was literally just dangling off the rooftop by my fingertips about to fall to my death? I trusted you. And then, the next time you release a book and I see your book pop up on my recommended for you page, I'm going to be looking at it like, the last time, you left me dangling off a rooftop by my fingertips for 20 pages while we watched these other characters eat soup in a cabin. I'm not ready to forgive you for that. And then the only way I'd end up reading your next book is if all my friends were like, you gotta read it, it's her best book yet. And then it's still only a maybe. There is a caveat to this. The only way cliffhangers can work in a multi-POV novel is if you're switching between points of view that are at equally high intensity moments. Like, okay, we're not dangling by our fingertips anymore on this chapter, but the last time we saw this character, she had just taken a sip of poisoned wine, and I kind of want to know what happens to her, so I'm going to keep reading. I'm not going to skip her section. You see? Tip number 7. Alright, let's be real for a minute. Come closer. Here's the thing. I am your friend. I am also a writer. I have written 6 novels, and I know how hard it is to develop and craft and implement a unique, strong voice to carry the novel forward. And then to create another unique, strong voice to carry your next book forward. Developing a unique voice for every book that you write is a skill that I don't know how long it takes you to capture, probably your entire life, you know? It's difficult, it's a hard thing to do. And the thing with multi-POV books is that you need to develop multiple strong, unique voices for just one book. Rather than one voice per book where you get the chance to grow, you have to develop these strong, unique voices multiple times for just one book. So if your book has 3 points of view, you have to develop 3 unique, strong points of view. But you don't get the luxury of having it be 3 different books that people can choose from. They're all in one book. So they're all, competing for strength and favorability. And that's just hard to do. I'm just telling you, not in the sense, it is like triple the work because you have to develop this strong, unique voice 3 times. But it's also extremely unlikely that all 3 voices are going to end up equal in strength. Strength of prose, of readability, of favorability. Think of your favorite author. Even if you enjoy every book that they've written, I'm sure there are certain books that are just something special to you, that you love more than the others, and read over and over again. And the author probably also has books that you read just once and were like, well, yeah, I love that author, but this book just wasn't for me. And that is the nature of art. You won't love everything equally, even by the same author. So when you write a multi-POV book, every POV you add runs the risk of being the less strong voice and dragging your whole book down. So instead of having a book that you love, and then another book by the same author that you're like, this was good, but I don't feel the need to ever read it again. Those 2 books are now the same book. They're all mingled together now in their strengths and weaknesses. And you have a book that could have been great, but instead keeps getting slowed down by these less interesting chapters. And that might not have anything to do with the actual strength of writing in each point of view. It might happen simply because of the nature of the character arcs happening within certain points of view. So if one POV has a character arc that's centered around a romantic subplot that you're really into, and then the other POV is centered around a subplot involving conflict with their parents or something that you're just not as into, both subplots could be very important to the main plot, they could be necessary to have, but you, the reader, are still stuck with a huge chunk of the book that you're just not as into. That is the risk of multi-POV books. Turning a book from something that you read over and over again throughout your life to one that you rarely return to because you don't look forward to reading those less interesting chapters. And I'm not saying this is like a one-off thing that happens sometimes with multi-POV books. I find this happening literally almost every time I read a multi-POV book. Very few of my favorite books are multi-POV. I love the Da Vinci Code, but still it's literally 70% one POV. Because what happens is those chapters that you're just not into drag the whole book down. I think I at least want to just caution you against starting writing with a multi-POV book. Just do it for me, just humor me. And then while you're writing a single POV book as your first book, really pay attention to how much work and effort and revision and struggles and tears go into creating the unique voice that needs to happen to carry your book forward before even trying to write a multi-POV book, because then when you do write a multi-POV book, you'll have a better understanding of just how much work will need to go into each voice, each point of view. Okay, that's just important to remember. I just wanted to let you know. This is just according to me. My opinion isn't the end-all be-all, except that it is. I know I keep using the same books as examples, but I like them and they're well known, so